Hello everybody, welcome back to another review on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and of course with me is Milly.
Hi.
We have Sophie
Hey.
and we have Dan.
Hi.
So today we're going to be doing something quite similar but also a bit different as well. So currently we're recording this on a Wednesday, but I plan on getting it out on the Thursday simply for the fact that unlike with the seasonal reviews, there's not going to be an interview at the end of this one as such in terms of an announcement. But we'll see how that goes because there is a Gourmet Ghost interview coming up, but I didn't want to connect it with this because I've got other plans. Or then if I did connect it with this, then all of them would have to be linked. I had a whole debate with myself over it. I'm just kind of going a bit crazy here. But today we are going to be reviewing Scooby Doo and the Gourmet Ghost, which I think is going to be one that may split us in half a little bit. So I'm excited to see how we get into that. So Millie, as the great MC for this, where do you want to start?
I guess we'll just start off with the story as is. Like it starts in certainly with the colour palette, you can tell that this starts off a while ago. It's a flashback to Chef de Filet, and kind of the people that he was helping, his restaurant, and also shouting Red Ghost, which sets up the mystery, but at the same time, it's not an entirely cold open because we don't see what the monster looks like. There's certainly, I don't know, a lot of suspense built around this one. It's a while until we actually see the full thing. We see lots of kind of like little snippets, but yeah, it's certainly a suspense builder for the monster on this one. Um, I quite like what this flashback sets up, and I love how it feeds into the titles as well, because we then use those titles to see how everything changed over time in that building, bringing us up to the current day and the mystery with the gang. So, in terms of how this one starts off, JB, what's your thoughts?
So I'm always a bit confused when they go into the world of the historicals and stuff. Like I remember getting called out for my stupidity a couple of years ago now when I thought that the American Civil War was the battle between the Democrats and the Republicans. And so when it comes to stuff like this, like I'm completely blind to it all. So yeah, I was a little bit confused, but I just instantly fell in love with the animation style, not the character design. I think I'm going to get to that a bit later, but I just love how charming and almost therapeutic it was to watch Chef Deflay putting the bun in the stove, and what they did with the fire I think could be a bit jarring, but they do it in such a way that I think it blends it forward in a really cool way. So yeah, I'm captivated in the atmosphere of the movie, if not a bit thrown off by the story so far, but I'm happy.
I mean, like you said, in terms of the atmosphere and stuff, I love it when they do these flashbacks and the color palette they use it almost and use it in therapeutic. To me, it was almost like Witch's Ghost vibes with some of the flashbacks and color palettes they used there. It just felt very familiar, and something about Scooby feeling familiar is normally what makes me enjoy it a lot. So I think certainly for me it was a good feel at the start. Sophie, what about you?
Yeah, great cold open. Like you said, like how it fed into like the credits, like that was all like really good. Like JB said, I love this animation style. It's like one of my favorites. But yeah, I mean, as far as cold openings go, yeah, it was great. I was interested. It got me captivated into the story, and yeah, I have watched the whole movie, so it did something.
And what about you?
Yeah, I like this cold open. There's something a bit different, and like Sophie just said, it really cleverly goes into the opening credits, which I like. Although, a funny story, when I first ever got this DVD, for some reason my old DVD player was tripping for some reason with this specific DVD. So when I first watched it, the cold open was like in a different language, but because it shows you the flags at the beginning, I thought it was meant to. I thought it was meant to be in this foreign language for some reason, and it wasn't until the gang started speaking, I was like, oh crap, my audio seems to have tripped. But so the first time I ever watched this, I was a bit confused. Like, why aren't they putting subtitles on for us? But no, I like it. It's something different. And I think it really cleverly, obviously, when you first watch it, you think, what's this got to do with anything? But it really cleverly connects to the present day. So I think it's something good. It's something different. It's better than just the typical present day, but the person gets scared by a ghost. At least it takes place in the past. It's something different.
Yeah, it does. And I think when it happens in the past as well, it's almost kind of like, is it real? Because at that point as well, it's kind of like the person that is this monster can't have stuck around for all that long. So how does it tie in? So we go from those really good titles, bringing us to modern day, to introducing the characters. So this is another one where we're learning about one of the gang's relatives. So Fred's going to see his uncle. We've said it a lot, but for me, this is a great story arc because I do like meeting the wider family, like Loch Ness with Daphne's cousin. It kind of makes them seem a little bit more real in the world they're in, but also that this is a celebrity guest, Chef Bobby Flay. But I like how they do this. It's not like that Guess Who style where it's like, oh, TV personality and celebrity chef Bobby, where it's kind of like you feel stupid if you don't know who it is. With this, you can enjoy this as if they've just made up a celebrity chef or as if this is a celebrity chef. It's not that gimmick. It's not like they've only agreed to do this for some promotion. It actually fits into the story well. So they build his character nicely, but also having the cat Nacho there quite early on. There's a really cute interaction between them and Scooby, and you know that that's kind of quite a positive character formation as well. So I do like the side characters and how they're set up with this. JayBee, is like those side characters, did they resonate with you quite well, or any initial concerns at this point?
I think exactly the opposite. Now, I agree with what you said about comparing it to Guess Who, because I'm not the greatest fan of Guess Who in terms of concept as such, and execution, I think they do what they're trying to do. It's just not necessarily something that I particularly like to watch. And I'm glad it wasn't like you say, like, oh, here's this great celebrity. Now we're going to go on this great celebrity adventure. It's very much set within the realm of Scooby, where if you don't know who Bobby Flay is, you can just interpret this as Fred has an uncle that is a chef who is well known within that universe. So I do like how smoothly they did that. I think where it starts to get into the realm of, I don't know, it just seems a bit redundant to me when a whole other cast of kooky characters are presented to us, and there's this famous chef, and then there's another famous chef. Oh, and then there's a famous chef that's in a couple, like, and I don't think that any of them really get any personality of themselves. They're almost just, celebrity chef number one, celebrity chef number two. They're just background filler. I think it helps that they do add in some more bombastic characters like No Say Worthy and Chef Sue to at least add a bit more flavor to the mix. But if it was just this other cast of chefs, it would just be they're like extras on a set, and I just they feel
Yeah.
like for this type of thing, it's just a missed opportunity. Like it's cooking. They could have showcased all of them having their own distinct style, maybe their own maybe they're all from different countries, and you could get a different look at what types of food. And but as it is, it's just generic celebrity chef 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they're just gonna bumble around, so we don't automatically think it's one person over the other.
I can see what you mean. I think that they certainly do give off the kind of feel of it being extras. Once you enter the cooking arena, there's a lot of people within there. And my counterpoint would be maybe part of making their characters a bit more bland. You know the characters that you want to be focusing on. You know that's, Chef Filet, it's sous chef Sue, it's the really creepy groundskeeper, and the person that keeps measuring things. Like, I think the people it wants you to focus on, it tries to give that distinction too. I would agree with you that the characters in the arena, I could barely tell you more than one thing about them, other than one of them has a cat set on their head and one of them doesn't like Shaggy. But I think they try to maybe make a distinction with the characters that you need to focus on. But like you said, this is a movie that perhaps is going to split people, and so these conversations are going to start happening. Sophie, what about you? Is there any characters that you were kind of leaning towards in this opening scene? Did you like how it was introduced, or did you kind of have a couple of red flags around this stage?
Yeah, going into it, I've heard of Bobby, but I didn't know much about him. So I kind of thought, what if Fred's uncle's like Gordon Ramsay or something? It's kind of like a funny gag. But I will say it's a crossover, like Milly said, that doesn't wait, like it's a family member, so it kind of has more meaning as to why they're there and that they haven't just randomly bumped into these celebrities, which I really liked, and it really set up the story. Also, in terms of the whole like movie, it doesn't weigh and hold on to the fact that it's like a celebrity crossover of these chefs. Like they're there, which is great to like see them. But at the end of the day, this movie is what we all love, and it's the classic Scooby Doo story, which I really do enjoy the storyline of this movie. So I feel like there's a nice balance between like celebrity chefs and like true Scooby Doo, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, I think with Bobby being Fred's uncle is like a fun little gag, which I love how Fred was oblivious to the fact that he was a celebrity. Like that's so Fred, like literally all he would do, and like brilliant. I just find it so funny, that opening scene.
I think there's something exciting for Shaggy and Scooby's character as well about it being like a restaurant retreat. Like the second you know that there's something in relation to food and them two, you know they're gonna have the best time ever. So as soon as you knew that was the setting, for me instantly for those two characters as well, it was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing. They're gonna love it. Dan, what about you? Did you like how the characters were set up at this point, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, going into this film, I had no idea who Bobby Flay was. I didn't know who Giada De Laurentiis was. I didn't know who Marcus Samuelson was. So to be honest, it almost was like these were just people that made up. Like, and to be fair, I still don't really know who these people are outside of Scooby Doo. But I think that worked. And like you say, it wasn't very sort of heavy-handed like Guess Who, where they have to like mention the celebrity, they have to mention why they're famous. And like Sophie's mentioned, it was a nice little gag for Fred to just sort of be like, well, yeah, it's my uncle, I've just introduced you. But yeah, like you say, I really like the setting. I thought the jokes with Scooby and Shaggy really landed, and they just made sense because Scooby and Shaggy love the food and they're there at this sort of cooking competition. It made perfect sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
I liked it. And I guess like you've said, I think it was a good mixture where they had real chefs and stuff, but then they had sort of the made up ones. So it didn't just feel like, oh, we'll get as many celebrity chefs to guest star as possible. It felt good. And you say it was classic Scooby. It was, we're going to visit one of the gang's relatives and there's going to be a mystery, which it's been a classic from day one, really.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, if anything, it's too classic in that the one kind of thing that I guess the main flaw, or in fact maybe only flaw I can find with the movie, is when we start meeting all the side characters. There's the one that's named Nosy something, there's Sous Chef Sue, and the person who clearly wants to buy the inn from Fred's uncle. And I think whenever you see somebody wanting to buy the land or money been involved at any stage, you're like, okay, it's 100% them.
Yeah.
And that's my main and perhaps, like I say, only flaw with this is the second that person was on the screen, it was like, oh gosh, it's you. I know it's you. You can make the other people look as suspicious as you want, and you can do anything with those characters, but I will bet money on it being you. And that was my kind of, like I say, my main flaw with this. I mean, JayBee, did you know who you thought it was when you kind of met all these characters?
I'm trying to think back to when we first saw this. I don't think I knew who, because a lot of the times when I see a suspect that is too obvious, I'm like, okay, so that instantly rules you out because there's no way that the movie or the show or whatever is gonna go that it's not gonna spell it out so early on. And in a way, I guess they kind of do and they don't, but so yeah, I think I definitely was more suspicious of them, but I was just like, oh, no, that means it's not you. So we'll just see what twists and turns there may or may not be in store.
Yeah, okay. And Sophie, did you have any kind of indication early on as to who you thought it was from all the characters they were introducing?
Well, I can't remember the first time. However, I've just watched it for this review and I haven't seen it in a good while. And as soon as the culprit popped up, I was like, it's definitely you. Which I don't know if that's like a subconscious like thing that I remembered, but I don't know. But I did find him a little bit suspect, so I don't know if that was the reason. So I don't know the first time though, I can't remember.
No, I'm quite lucky in that I've got a really, really bad memory. I've actually got something wrong with it. And so most of the time when I see these, it's like, hey, I'm watching them for the first time. So I just get that, oh, it's this, it's definitely got to be that. So yeah, I guess I'm just lucky that way. Sam, what about you? Do you remember the first time you saw all these characters? Was there one that kind of stood out as a, okay, I'm suspicious?
Okay, it's weird. I do remember the first time I ever watched this. I bought the DVD as soon as it came out, but I do not for the life of me remember if I guessed or if I suspected. And I've seen this film far too many times since then that, yeah, I just knew automatically who it was. But I suppose it's one of those where, like you say, that no say worthy and Sue Chef Sue. They were almost those classic red herrings where you're like, oh, so obviously not them. But like JB said, like normally with these type of like the later Scoobies, there's normally a twist where if there's someone who looks like, oh, it's obviously them, they're going to twist it round. It's not going to be them. So it's a bit weird that this time it actually was them. Although I suppose I didn't guess there is a sort of a little twist at the end where it is who you think it is, but not sort of in the way. Like
Yeah.
there is that tiny little twist, and I definitely didn't see that one coming. I'm for certain.
No, I didn't see that twist coming either. So, like you said, obviously we'll get onto it a bit later, but there is a double or in fact triple unmasking. And so initially it is the person that wanted to buy the property, but then they're unmasked again, and it's the person that was the really sweet old man at the start. And they just seemed so lovely. They were like, they'd helped him with the project. They brought all this like old paperwork that used to be his uncle's to his ancestors to him, and all this sort of stuff. It's like, oh, they're so nice. You just couldn't imagine it not being them. Like, you couldn't imagine it being them. They just seemed too sweet. So I don't know. I really liked a lot of the characters that they introduced, and I thought they used some of them well. But I do think, as JB was saying, perhaps you do need to try and distinguish yourself, like, okay, I need to pay attention to this character, this one, and this one, because perhaps, there were quite a few. So ultimately, to get the kind of restaurant retreat up and running, there's going to be a live broadcast, showcasing all the new technology stuff. And until this point, we've seen a lot of kind of teasers as to what the arm of the monster's going to look like, or the silhouette of the monster's going to look like. When they're having a midnight snack, we kind of see one half of it. It's not until this broadcast that we get the full picture of the red ghost. And I think, as Scooby villains go, aesthetically, I absolutely love this one. I do think it looks quite creepy, but it's kind of what we were saying before. It reminds me of like older era Scooby, like Witches, Ghosts, Zombie Island, especially with some of the facial features. It was kind of calling back to that era for me. It doesn't seem kind of like, oh, it's just a little like monster that doesn't look that scary at all, that's kind of been in some of the more movies of this time. It genuinely looked somewhat terrifying. So I'd say aesthetically, it's certainly one of the best films of that era. JB, what did you think of the Red Ghost?
Honestly, I think the Red Ghost is fantastically done. I think from atmosphere to creep factor to design, love the Red Ghost, and the shush is just that extra element of scary. I do feel like it's quite a derivative of things like the Phantom Shadow, like with the way they structured it and with what they may or may not have borrowed from in terms of past villains or just your generic specters in general. I think they would be a group of schmucks to not make it look good because it just is an inherently good design and good concept. So I do think it's well done, but at the same time, it's very safely well done in my opinion. Like it is my good idea of just good Phantom. But I guess that's all it needs to be. I guess I could argue in a world where they're doing the celebrity chef thing, maybe we could have had some more food-based or cooking-based monster, but I like the Red Ghost.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of kind of story arcs they could have gone with here. They could have kind of made it more prominent towards the food-based side of things, or even towards kind of the war that was happening at the start and kind of showcase it as something that was more prominent to that time or something like that as well. But I'd say, in terms of, I know you're saying safe, I do think that it was a lot scarier than they normally went for at that time. I do think that to some extent they were taking a bit of a leap of faith with this one. Sophie, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think he's a great looking villain. I love the animation style. He has got the creepy factor. But there is one point, and I think I made a post on it a long, long time ago. This movie came out after Batman the Brave and the Bold.
Oh
Now,
yeah.
the villains are pretty much identical. And I remember watching it for the first time ever this one. I'm thinking, but we've just seen this villain. And I just find that part quite funny. But overall, apart from that little blip, I think the actual character design of this villain, yeah, he's got the scary factor. I know what you mean, like with the theme, with food or with the story, but as far as Scooby villains go, it works. Like, I'm not complaining. We've had worse.
Definitely. And Dan, what did you think about the villain?
Yeah, I love the design of the villain. I can't even remember Batman Brave and the Bold, in all honesty. So I'm gonna have to Google that to see if they are the same. But for me, I thought it was really creepy. Like you say, especially for this era, they seem to really, it wasn't really like the sort of sound it has. It is, I don't know what you're saying, it is a bit derivative. And like you mentioned the Phantom Shadow, but also I don't know if you've ever played the PlayStation 2 game, Mystery Mayhem. But one of the ghosts in that's like a green version of this ghost. So it does, yeah, it isn't the most original. And maybe they could have found something more fitting, but I mean, like Sophie says, we've seen worse. There's been a more classic Scooby Doo episodes where I'm like, this is the most random villain for this setting. So I think it works. I think it's really creepy. And like, I don't know, I liked it. I like when it was, when at first you think they've captured it as like a drone. I just thought it was really clever the way they did it. So yeah, I like it. No complaints from me.
I mean, I think this is an entirely different video in itself, but certainly, like you both said, there's been a lot worse villains out there. I remember, and you were saying there about classic Scooby episodes. I remember seeing the Minor 49 for the first time, and I just thought it was another character. Like, they just look like a normal person. I didn't know for the first few minutes that we were meant to be scared of it. So, yeah.
You can't publicly criticize the 1969 series. We'll get crucified in the comments later.
That's okay. I'll live with that. But I can see what you're saying.
I agree.
So, where did we get up to? So, like we said, the ghosts come in, it's ruined the broadcast, and ultimately everybody has to split up because they're trying to track stuff down, work out what's going on. I think there's some really nice scenes and character interactions here. I love how Scooby and Shaggy make Bobby Fillet and the other person with them strip the entire library looking for a secret passage. I do think that's quite funny. And I also think it's good that they kind of got paired off with them, so we got to see a different interaction. It wasn't just like, okay, the gang's gonna go off on their own now and take away from the main plot line. So I do think that was done quite well. Did anybody else have any thoughts on them all splitting up and kind of how that panned out that they want to throw out there?
Yeah, like you say, it's nice because I really get sick of when it's just Shaggy and Scooby go off and then the other three go off. It was nice that obviously the two chefs went with them. And also with this one, what I really appreciated was they didn't just have Fred, Daphne, and Velma together. They had just Daphne and Velma go to investigate, I think, No Worthy. And I thought that was really nice. It was really nice that the two girls got that, which I know we saw in like The Mystery Begins and stuff, but in terms of the Scooby cartoon, we rarely get to see that. So I thought that was really cool. And I think
Oh, sorry.
it,
I was just
I was
going to
just
agree
gonna
with
say,
you on that, yeah.
yeah, I was just saying it led for some nice interactions. Like I like when Velma trips over and Daphne's like, "Have you thought about contacts?" Like it just, yeah, it was just sweet.
Yeah, it was. And I'm gonna say that leads to like the longest scene Fred's ever had on his own as well. Like normally he's watered down by being with other characters, whereas I'm sure this is the longest like scene he's had as just Fred, which again was just really nice. There was some different interactions here and I did really enjoy them.
Was it not just Ken?
No. Anybody else, anything on that point?
I want to ask, is this Kate Micucci as well?
Yeah, it is.
See, I thought she did a pretty good job in this movie. Like, I'm quite critical of her performances more often than not, just because I just think it's a few decibels that just mess with my ear. But in this one, I thought she did quite a nice performance. So yeah.
Okay, so following on from this is around the time they find that there's a secret message on the parchment, and that kind of opens up an entirely different kind of issue in itself. It appears that the original chef de filet was kind of like one of the bad guys and like a spy and feeding information and all that sort of thing. And that's when the ghost swoops in and steals the rest of the parchment as soon as they know how to reveal the secret behind it. So this leads into another chase sequence, and I think they utilize stuff well here, like the fact that there's like a maze outside, they turn that into the corridor scene, stuff like that. The only, and I guess kind of, if I am being critical, this is the clumsiest ghost we've ever had. They fall over twice in the space of one room, and ultimately lose all the papers and stuff because they fell over, which I did find quite funny. Like, oh gosh, this person really is really clumsy. JayBee, I know you've been somewhat critical so far. Is that something that you'd picked up on, or
Not really. I've kind of come used to the idea of Scooby and the whole plot line just being a means to getting to the unmasking. It's just about how much fun you can have up until that point, and I think fun enough, to be honest. I don't really have an issue with dropping the papers because then what? We're just gonna have another filler scene, some more jokes, something wacky's gonna happen, and the papers are gonna get to the gang anyway. I don't expect this to be like at the end of Infinity War, the gang lose, and then I have to wait for part two. So I think it's all right done. So I don't have a big issue with it.
Yeah. And I mean, the end of that chase sequence is where we get the first unmasking, which is the drone arriving, the drone being at least the iteration of the ghost that hovers. So I must say I do like the double unmasking. I think they've tried to create so much suspense throughout this movie. I think they've tried to make it as engaging as they can. And again, just throwing this question out there rather than going around specifically, what did everyone else think to the multiple unmaskings? So this been the first one with the drone and stuff.
I kind of go back to Happy Halloween. Remember the drones there? You knew they were drones and you're kind of like bored of it. But how with this one, I was, invested throughout the whole movie up until this point, and like it wasn't like boring. It still worked with the movie. Yes, even though there was like more to go to it. Also, I just want to say, I've watched it again, as I just said. I couldn't believe how many funny elements were in this movie. Like I did laugh several times, and I couldn't remember doing that last time. And going back to the parchment paper, it's such a classic Scooby thing to do, like in a mystery. And I just find this movie like it's so calling back to like Scooby Doo, What Are You, which I love. And I just think the whole layout, the design, the animation is a real callback to that. Which so far I've just really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I must admit, I do like stuff like that. I don't like it. You know, when you get to the unmasking at the end and Velma's like, oh, well, of course, because this is the chemical symbol for this, which also translates to, and you're like, well, how are we meant to know that? Whereas, like, some of my favorite mystery stories growing up talked about using that kind of citrus hidden ink sort of stuff. Like, it's something that I remember from being a child reading about, and like you say, it's just, a good where are you explanation for things. I do like having that more, I don't know, like practical side of things than just Velma making up a sentence that sounds intelligent out of thin air. So I do think there was something good kind of on the nostalgic side of this, certainly. I think this movie just overall is really quite good for nostalgia. So they've done the first unmasking, and then they want to set up another sequence within the food arena to lure the ghost back in and to, do the unmasking of who actually it was that had the drone and everything. So they do that event. I feel like we should probably go into the costumes here of how the gang all dress. I love Fred's outfit. I love that they used the colour of the ascot as the tie. I felt like that fit really well. I like that they used a purple band around Daphne's dress just as that kind of colour symbolism. I can completely understand if anybody's got any issues with Velma's outfit in this, because there was no semblance of it being Velma. But other than that, I think they did the other two really quite well.
I didn't even notice Velma's outfit, to be honest. Probably
was-
because Daphne's was so good. I noticed Fred's tie, but I didn't actually notice Velma's in one.
That's because they didn't give you anything to notice. Like, there was something to notice about the other two characters that linked to their character, if
That's
that
for
makes
sure.
sense. Sophie, what did you think? Because I know that when it comes to the outfits of the gang,
It's a love-hate relationship in this scene. I love how they've got completely different outfits that aren't exactly like the colours of the gang's outfits, a little nods here and there. However, Velma, I think she's just in a black dress, isn't she? I can't
yeah.
remember. Like, it's just like just a little nod or something, like anything. I love how they've done Fred and Daphne. Like, they're not, Fred's not in blue, but it's Fred because he's got the orange tie going on, and Daphne, she's got a real dark purple dress, which is almost black with the lilac waistband, and it's just some little nods that I really like. But yeah, they did Velma dirty. I'm sorry.
They really did. It's kind of like they forgot about her at the end and had to rush. Dan, what about you? Do you like how the gang look in this scene? Do you think it was done well?
No, I don't. I know it's unrealistic, but I I always think the gang should always be in their signature colours. This is something I really loved about What's New Scooby Doo, that no matter what, if they're in a diving costume or anything or a spacesuit, it would always be in their colours. Like I say, even if that's not realistic. And with them dressing in formal wear, I always think of two occasions. I always think of the beginning of Scooby Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, and I think of the prom episode of Mystery Incorporated, the Alice May one. And I think the costumes at both times were just perfect. They had the gang's colours and what they would dress in, just absolutely perfect. So when I saw Velma in like a black dress or whatever, I was just like, no, it should be orange. Why is she in this dress? It just wasn't Velma. I can't imagine Velma. Like even if it had maybe like a tiny little scene of Daphne sort of suggesting this dress or something, it just didn't seem like something Velma would just have. Why would Velma have this little black dress? No. I didn't like it. It did take me out a little bit. It's the one part of the film I thought, oh, come on, could you not have got this right? But maybe they were just going for something different. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I know I was quite critical of it on this watch through. Like, I was literally studying their shoes and everything, and even their shoes were just like plain black, no links to them. I was like, okay. But like you say, maybe they were just
Yeah.
trying something different. But ultimately, the ghost appears. It's no longer the drone, it's the one that's got to kind of walk along the floor, so they're kind of tripping over countertops and stuff like that. They get the papers and all the technology takes over to try and catch them. I kind of like how they do stick to a concept when they get one in this movie. Like, it wasn't like they have this really technological kitchen and then forget about it. At least they bring it back at the end and try and use it when they're trying to catch the villain, which I did appreciate. And we get the unmasking. Like we said, it's the typical, oh, it was the person trying to buy the land. But then second unmasking, it was the really nice person that I'd have completely ruled out, which I don't know. I really did enjoy this movie. I do like how it ends. I love the story. So I think it goes quite well. JayBee, what did you think to the unmasking?
Oh, I didn't mind the technology kitchen. It's just I'm kind of over the trend in Scooby-Doo where we get to a setting and it's like the writers or Warner Bros. doesn't think it's interesting enough. So they try and over technologify it, like with this kitchen, like with the Mystery Machine X. And I would understand if Warner Bros. Was a normal company, like Disney, that cares primarily about profits. So we have to blow up the Mystery Machine every time or introduce different set pieces because we want to sell toys. It's like they have that mindset, but then they're too goofy to actually produce the toys. So it's like, okay, it's an interesting kitchen. Like I like what it's doing. It's just I've kind of grown a bit cynical to the over technologification of a lot of these things. Um, yeah, the unmasking was good. Again, it's just I'm gonna say that I've said this a lot in this review. Everything leading up to it, from the invisible ink, I'm like, these are good ideas, but they were tried and tested by about a million different mediums before this. So it just seems like the safest possible decisions to make were made, and it all works well. Like, I've had a really good time watching this, but it just seems like it's played it very safe, very tried and tested. There's nothing new, nothing ambitious. It's just nice. It's like a glass of water. It's gonna get me through the day. I'm having a pleasant time, but you could have at least put a little lemon in it or something. So that's kind of my attitude to this whole conclusion.
Okay, and Sophie, what did you think to the unmasking?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, like I said, this time around I knew it was him. Going back to like the technology kitchen, I just found it funny how like a Scooby-Doo staple now since What's New is like some wacky, really cheesy technology like situation. I mean, it didn't add anything major to the movie, but it was there. And like Millie said, they didn't just like abandon it halfway through the movie, like they brought it back, which at least they tied it all in together to some degree. But yeah, it's a classic unmasking. Like I keep saying, like it's such a classic Scooby-Doo. Like that's why I love this movie. So yeah, it is what it was, and it was good. Yeah.
And Dan, what did you think?
I like this. I think it makes sense within the context of the film. I mean, I'm never the biggest fan of when a character is revealed to be wearing a mask that's just a human mask. I always think that's such a weird, and it's not even just Scooby-Doo. I know Mission Impossible does this all the time, where I just think, it just looks so realistic. I think they did the same in Legend of the Vampire as well, and I'm just like, I do find that weird, but I'm like, oh, hey ho. But yeah, the more I watch, the more I think it makes sense that it was the old man that did it, because otherwise he would have been such a pointless character. Like, why would he even exist if he wasn't there to be the villain? But I also get so confused because at one point I'm sure he mentions his wife, and I'm like, does she know that you're like dressing up as this young businessman and going around? I was like, you should probably tell her because this is weird.
Probably hers for the bedroom.
God,
I think
maybe.
it adds makes a little bit of sense that it was him, because it's like maybe he found all this paperwork because he was investigating, didn't know what to do with it, and maybe hoped that they would know what to do with it or something. I think it does tie back quite well.
Yeah, that's what I like about the series. Like I say, a lot of it's a bit nonsensical or a bit weird, but it all makes sense within the context of the film. So I think it really does work well as a conclusion.
Okay, so with that, we go to the smash or pass verdict, starting as always with JayBee. So JayBee, is this movie a smash or a pass, and why?
See, it's weird. I've enjoyed it like a smash, but just in terms of what it's made me feel, and I'm gonna echo a little bit what I said in Mystery Begins. It's a bit like they've had a really, really simple concept in their mind with not a lot of ambition. It's very simple, very difficult to mess up, and they didn't mess up. They did what they needed to do. They hit all the right beats. Like, it's like when you've got the goal to paint a sun and you paint a sun. Like, they've done it. It's cool. I had a good time, but it was just that. And I don't know. It felt like a smash, but I don't think it deserves a smash. So it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one.
But what is it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna smash it, but I'm probably never gonna watch it again. What about you, Milly?
Well,
Feel yourself.
I like making quite bold statements. So the first time we watched this, we were reviewing every Scooby Doo movie in order. So we just slogged through the Rock and Roll Mystery, Haunted Hollywood, Curse of the Speed Demon, Beach Blowout, The Brave and the Bold. Like, I was giving up on Scooby entirely. I thought it had like died a painful death while like we'd not been watching it. And then I get to this movie, and all of a sudden I'm getting all the nostalgic feels of Scooby that I had when I was young. It's like the story that I remembered, it's resolved in the way that I like, it's the style of villain I liked, all of which those other movies had made me think I was never going to see again. And this was like a little ray of sunshine on that journey, because we were about to get into Curse of the 13th Ghost and Zombie Island, which was just absolutely painful. So this was like the breath of fresh air that I needed. And so from then on in, I was always going to have positive connotations with this movie. And I don't see that ever changing. I honestly absolutely love this movie. I think it's one of the better ones, certainly of the last kind of like 10 to 15 years. I think it's really good. There isn't anything I'd change about it. There's nothing I'd say was a flaw about it. And it'd be one of the first ones I'd jump to if someone gave me this era and said pick a movie to watch. So definite smash from me. And Sophie, what about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I do get what JayBee's saying. They played it safe, but they did it really well. And compared to what came before and after, this was the best movie. When you say Gourmet Ghost to me, the only thing I think about is we haven't had a good movie since. I do not class Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. That's like not part of that. But Gourmet Ghost was the last Scooby movie that I really, really enjoyed, and I just think the execution. I mean, I know I keep saying it was simple, but it works. It's classic Scooby. I like all the characters. I like how they incorporated the celebrities, but not forced it down your throat and making it a big deal. I just think they combined everything so well, and even though it could have been, it was simple, it was classic Scooby, and I love it for that. And I love how, even though it is sad, it was the last Scooby movie that I've enjoyed up to this date, apart from Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, which we don't class. So definitely a smash.
Yeah, there definitely was something special about this movie. I think they did so many things so well. And Dan, what about you? It's you that suggested the movie this week. So is it because you love it? Is it because you hate it? What was your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely love this film, and this is definitely a smash for me. I still remember so clearly when I first watched this film, and maybe I'm biased because I was going through a really rough time when I first watched this, and so I think it just really helped me during that time, this and Curse of the Lake Monster. And as I'm sure I've mentioned in a Q&A before, they're both one of my part of my top 5 Scooby films ever. I love how it's nice and modern. It has modern elements like technology. It has great animation, but it still feels like classic Scooby. And in that way, like the way classic Scooby would sometimes introduce sort of guest stars as well. It's not in your face. You don't even have to know that these celebrities are actually real. They could just be made up. It's a classic mystery. It flows well together. It's nice. It's breezy. It's one of those. It always reminds me of just like a nice weekend watch, like on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. You could just chill and watch this film. I love it. Like I said, there's nothing I would change. Maybe at the end the gang would be wearing different colors for their outfits, but I can let that go. I can let that die. That's fine. So yeah, I do. I love this film. I could watch it multiple times, and I have seen this film far too many times. I love it.
It's brilliant. So, even if JB's was a little bit resentful, it is still a unanimous smash for Scooby Doo and the Gourmet Ghost.
I like that one. No, I do wish that I could garner the same love as everyone else clearly has for it. But then I think that just goes to show just some differences of opinions. I'm glad that everyone had a really lovely time with this, and I enjoyed it as well. I enjoyed it. I think maybe if I wasn't feeling so crap, maybe I would have had a better time, but I am on another planet right now. So maybe I'll do a rewatch in a year's time and see how I feel.
Oh, don't worry, I'll happily rewatch this one with you anytime.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, I guess by way of wrapping up, JB, what's the review next week?
Oh, Christ alive, I don't know. Do I know?
You were the one that put it in the chat confirming that it was Camp
Oh,
Scare.
yeah. So next week we'll be reviewing Scooby Doo Camp Scare, which is one that I am very much looking forward to. So I'm gonna have to get this I don't know if it's seasonal depression or what, but I'm gonna have that cured by next week because yeah, that's gonna be a big banger. Now, in terms of community news, I guess we've got a new picture book announced, which I can't remember what it's called. It's called Scooby Doo, and then for some reason Velma, and then it goes off on one. I've forgotten one, but the Hex Girls are in it, which is awesome. I don't think it comes out until like September or October, so it's quite a big wait for it. You got the title there?
Yes, it's Scooby Doo, Velma, and the Mystery of the River Ghost.
So I'm looking forward to that. If nothing else, that's a good start, good announcement to kick off 2024 with. So yeah, really, and it's not the same author, but it's the same illustrator as the Matthew K. Manning book. So yeah.
Maybe it's a good omen as well. We're kicking off the year with the Hex Girls. Like, let's let it continue.
On the 25th anniversary of Witch's Ghost as well. So yeah, who knows? Who knows? So what do I do now? I ask people where they can be found. I think that's very much what's next. So, Dan, where can people find you and stalk you on the internet?
You can find and stalk me on Instagram and Twitter at danfaz94.
And Sophie?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Scooby Doo Doo for life.
That is incredible. I'll leave all that in the description down below. And if you do want to see all of our information, that'll be in the link tree as always. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. Please make sure to leave your opinions on the Gourmet Ghost in the comment section, and we will see you next time.